Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Post-fight review for Fabio Wardley vs Michael Polite-Coffie, which was inextricably stopped prematurely by Howard Foster, who again has ruined another fight by jumping in too soon. And it's not just me who thinks it's premature. Social media is awash with outrage. Even the commentators, promoter Eddie Hearn, even the winning fighter Fabio Wardley says, yes, it was too soon. And while many of those were saying it was only another maybe 5 or 10 seconds, as Dillian Whyte put it, to Wardley getting the stoppage, Michael Polite-Coffie still had his wits about him. So this was round 4, and you had Wardley catching Coffie with the right hand. He follows up, just lets his hands go. Many of these shots were being avoided and blocked, but some were getting through. There were quite a few hitting Coffie, but he wasn't sort of staggered to the point where he was, couldn't defend himself. But one thing he didn't do was throw back enough to get the referee not to jump in. And clearly Howard Foster, who I think was standing on the wrong side to really sort of see everything that was either not landing or was being caught, a situation that he said, no, I have to jump in. And Coffie was outraged, actually shoving Foster off him. And he was clear-eyed after the stoppage. Immediately it was evident that Foster had done the wrong thing. And in this case with Wardley, who hadn't sort of really, dropped him heavily or anything like that, I think Coffie deserved more time. If only just to see what was going to happen in the next 5, 10, 20 seconds or whatever. We were 2 minutes or so just over into round 4, so there was a little bit of time for him to navigate, and we will just never know. But based on him effectively not being out on his feet or anything close to that, he was robbed of the opportunity to at least come back and show something and perhaps put it back on Fabio Wardley, who remains unbeaten now with the stoppage. And Wardley, after the fight, spoke about, wanting the opportunity to really get a highlight reel finish, and everyone else was piling on as well. Eddie Hearn was saying it was premature, the commentators, everyone, Dillian Whyte, and Howard Foster probably after this, and hearing everyone in the building, including, the home fighter and everyone else associated with the event, basically saying it was a terrible decision, premature. I'm sure he is feeling a little bit, who knows, maybe he's not feeling any level of regret. But a situation, it was a good learning fight for Fabio Wardley. Michael Polite-Coffie has had high-level sparring in recent years. He's also dangerous. He is a puncher. In round 3, actually, he looked like he buzzed Fabio Wardley momentarily, either with a right hand or a left hand, and sort of put him back onto the ropes and was just starting to let his hands go. But Wardley recovered, regrouped, and ultimately, for the most of this fight, he was the one that was in control. He was the aggressor. You had Coffie being a little bit negative. He was trying to conserve his energy and basically look for counters, not overdo himself. And the fact that he came into this fight at 269 pounds, he was 297 for his last fight, I thought, well, if this is a fight that can go some rounds, you have a situation where Coffie knows how to handle himself and potentially is hoping that Wardley is going to tie down the stretch, and maybe he was looking to work a bit more or catch Wardley with something that he was not expecting. As it was, he landed some shots, but as I say, it was a good learning fight because you had Wardley having to think in there. It wasn't all going his own way. He was having to break down a guy who was being negative at times and not really doing too much. And ultimately, he was able to, thanks to Howard Foster, in part, get the job done in round 4, where he landed a good right hand and he followed up, and there were several shots landing, but not to the point where Wardley was out on his feet. So we'll talk about the post-fight in a second. So I'll just say, Fabio Wardley is a developing fighter, and this was an appropriate test. And I think many of us thought that Wardley would go in here the favourite, and I was hoping for some sort of chin check, and I think we got it because Wardley was, hit with a few shots, and he did have to think on the fly, and he didn't have it all his own way. So that was kind of good to see. Some moments where he had to do something, show his IQ, in the ring IQ, I should say, and think on his feet, and he was able to just make a few adjustments and ultimately got the job done. So there's been a lot of talk in recent weeks about Wardley, Fraser Clark, Solomon Dakers and David Adeleye. a case where all these guys are calling out Wardley saying they want to face him. They think that they have the goods to beat him, take his British title, which he won when he fought Nathan Gorman last time out. So this is a situation where I hope some of these fights, if not all of them, happen, because these guys are, either on about the same level or there's not too much between them at this point. Maybe for Dacres, is it a stretch too far at this point? Adelaide, hasn't beaten anyone of note yet. Neither has Fraser Clarke at the pro level. Wardley certainly is in the driver's seat in terms of pro experience and what he's been through, the level of opposition that he's fought so far, because Michael Polite-Coffie is a good test at this stage for Fabio Wardley, who's got very little amateur experience. So of those names, you had Eddie Hearn actually weighing in before I get to what Wardley wants. So he talked about Dacres, Clarke and Adelaide, and he said actually Solomon Dacres is a good place to start. They have him in the stable. And for me, I think that makes a lot of sense for all involved. Dacres is clearly, even though he's half a dozen fights or so, he's the best, I think, out of the lot in terms of his technical pedigree. And I think it's an interesting fight for a number of reasons. I don't think he would knock Wardley out. If anything, Dacres would be the one that would be under pressure if Wardley started to land his powerful shots, because Wardley can crack. But he said, Eddie Hearn, Dacres is a good place to start, and I guess that makes sense given he is in the stable and they can keep it in-house. You had him referring to Fraser Clarke, saying that he hasn't fought anyone at a high level at this point. And of Adelaide, he said, well, he hasn't beaten anyone yet. And then he added, just as a bit of a zinger, he said he lost to Kamil Sokolowski, which I agree with. But David Adelaide has shown, especially with that Dimitri Beza's performance last time out, he is improving. The time spent in America, new tutelage, is actually adding stuff to his game. He's not just some robotic, raw, puncher. He's starting to string things together. But when he was asked, Fabio Wardley said he would like Fraser Clarke, that Clarke holds the most prestige, and obviously that'll be harking back to his amateur days and being an Olympic bronze medalist. So if any of these fights happen next, I think, actually, that's not too bad. I think in terms of risk, I think Dacres, in terms of having a lack of power, is probably another good progression fight for Fabio Wardley, especially as they're trying to backfill his lack of amateur experience. He just had a few white-collar fights before turning pro. Dacres is that perfect guy, I think, next. And if it then went to Fraser Clarke or even David Adelaide, let's face it, he's probably not going to face all three, but he might get one or two, hopefully two, and hopefully it would be Fraser Clarke, because I think Fabio Wardley beats Fraser Clarke. I think Clarke has been looking, just workmanlike and nothing more. Maybe he was in the amateurs too long, too much of an amateur style, and he seems to just, not have that it factor at the pro level. I don't project him going that far, but I think Wardley, with his reflexes, his athleticism and the power, he's got a chance to work up to a higher level and potentially to the world level at some stage. What do you make of it all? What do you make of the stoppage? I thought it was shocking. Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.